Check, check. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. Hip Hop Mike live from the crib. As always, I feel like these days, because, you know, this quarantine got everybody locked in their cribs. But this guy has made some moves during the quarantine and is currently checking in from Atlanta. I'm talking about Dot Cromwell in it, bitch.
Yo, what's good? What's good? What's good? Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for taking the time, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
So how are things in Atlanta? What's the vibes out there right now?
Honestly, man, I've been being a good citizen. I've still been social distancing. But you know, it's been cool for me, you know, coming from Philadelphia and New York, you know, I'm just used to being in like dense cities, skyscrapers everywhere and stuff like that. So it's cool to actually be out here and like be in the nature and just be able to create from a different perspective. So I'm loving it right now. It's bittersweet, you know.
All right. I mean, it's definitely a different vibe from where you from out in Philly.
Yeah, of course, man. So it's good, man. I mean, from the times that I have been outside so far, it's just a whole different energy. You know what I mean? Hopefully, I'll be able to get more into it as the year goes on.
All right. Is Philadelphia where you started making music?
Yeah, man. So I'd say like obviously everything started for me in Philly. You know what I mean? Just being younger and like one of like the first projects that I heard was probably like I had Puff, No Way Out. I had Mace, Harlem World. I had Jay, Hard Knock Life Volume 2. Man, forgive me. That shit, I had the bootleg at first.
Listen, Hov got his bread, so he good.
Yeah.
If he wasn't doing well, be like, you know what? Maybe I wish I would have given that 5. But Hov is doing pretty good.
So yeah, man, I started off listening to like stuff like that, and I remember like listening to Puff and like hearing his voice twice. I'm a little kid, right? So I'm like, how's he doing that? How's he talking on the track twice? Fast forward, I didn't know it was an ad lib. You know what I mean? So I remember getting a karaoke machine and like trying to like redub over tapes and stuff like that. And that's kind of like where it started for me. You know what I mean? But then definitely as I moved to New York, that's when like things started for me professionally. You know?
Well, I mean, I love 2 things about that, man. Like, one, I think that's such an interesting time to get into it because it's like right on the edge of when things started kind of becoming this glitz and glamour a little bit in the music. And like you would hear ad libs, you'd hear things that like really accentuated like the artists and the songs. Like before that, it was very like bars, beat, put it out, you know? But then with guys like Mace, you get a different kind of flavor. Mm-hmm. Like, and then, you know, we go Craig Mack, literally a different kind of flavor in your ear.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Hov, I think, was so similar to Big, but at the same time, this like new evolved version that kind of had a different kind of swag that was a little more polished and not as street, you know?
Nah, true. I was younger too, so it was like that was the first J that I was introduced to was that polished version that you're saying. And then like right around like I want to say like 2000 when like, you know, stuff like LimeWire and Kazaa and all of that stuff came out. That was when I started like being able to go backwards. You know what I mean? And then I was coming of age. I was able to start go to the store, buy CDs and stuff like that. So then I was able to hear Volume 1 from Jay and Reasonable Doubt and actually see like how he changed, you know what I mean, and evolved.
Yeah. That's why I say it's such a great time to get into it because it's like literally, I'm sorry. It'd be blowing up my phone. Literally, that's the time I feel like you could appreciate the old school, but also have a respect for the new stuff that was starting to come out in the early 2000s. Because a lot of people that listened to like that came on the tail end of that, they was like, "Nah, I'm done. Like hip hop changing, like it's sold out." And
okay. Yeah, you froze for a second. But what you say? A lot of people what?
My fault. Said like a lot of people. I feel like at that point, if you was like super into hip hop and not just getting into hip hop, then it was like almost pick a side. It's like you was either kind of like being part of this Mace and this new thing that Bad Boy was doing.
Yeah.
Or you was stuck on your OG old school like 90s. That's it. 2000s about.
Come
in, man. You get the best of both worlds, which I think is interesting.
Nah, for sure, man. It was definitely a great time, man. Great time to be introduced to music, like you said.
And the second thing I took from that is just your ear, because a lot of people, when they first start listening to music, it's like, you know, they hear things that kind of are relatable, but to actually hear the ad libs at that time before it was really like accentuated and you had programs where you could like make ad libs.
Right.
You already had that creative bug, it sounds like.
Yeah, I was just so curious to it, you know what I mean? And that's when I realized for me, it was really like, you know, from there, it's like I went down the path of like writing and whatnot, and being a songwriter and artist and everything. But it's like, for me, it was really about the creation of the whole thing. You know what I mean? I think that's why that part caught me, because it's like, I just need to figure that out. You know what I mean? I need to figure out how are they creating this, you know? So yeah, man, it's amazing time.
So when do things go from like karaoke sets into actually taking some of the things you was writing and like putting together? I mean, because LimeWire time, you still had to go to a studio. It wasn't necessarily as digital as it is now. Had you hit a studio or anything, or
You
did
know
it
what?
take a while?
So yeah, that was like when I'm like probably like just starting high school, or maybe I'm like in like 8th grade at that time period.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So at that point it was like I was really just like figuring it out. You know what I mean? I happened to be at one of my homies' crib, and it was like a new friend. I go around his way, and like I'm meeting all the kids from around his way from his block, and he just so happens to have a karaoke machine in his basement. So we're down there playing like 2K. This is probably the first 2K. You know what I mean? And they're like, he has a karaoke machine, so they cut some instrumentals on. They start passing the mic around, and they're like all playing around. And I'm in my head like, oh, I've been doing this for years, and I've never told anyone. When this mic gets to me, this is gonna be crazy. You know what I mean? And when they pass it to me, and I start rapping, they're like, oh, you rap like for real. You know what I mean? But that was when it was like, so yeah. So from there, it was just like I kept kind of freestyling around them, and they introduced me to a DJ around my way. His name was DJ Art to the Izzy. You know what I mean? And he was like a DJ in Philadelphia. And he kind of like heard me, and he like kind of like brought me around to like cut tapes with him. So I want to say I put like my 10,000 hours in Philadelphia. You know what I mean? And probably like right around the time when I got ready to leave Philly, I started doing like some college shows and stuff like that, and little interviews here and there. And I touched a little bit of studio time. But it was really when I met the friend who I live with now, Nana Kwebina, you know what I mean? And like I was around, I had my own recording equipment, you know what I mean? So that's kind of like, maybe I wouldn't say like didn't push me into the studio life, because like we were all part of that do it yourself age, you know what I mean? Like coming off of Kazan, stuff like that. It was kind of like I had the information to figure out that, okay, maybe I should get a microphone, maybe I should get this, that, and the third. So I had been recording on my own, and I had like spot in Philly, like I had the basement in my house, and we would just all call it the basement. 20 rappers in there. Everybody's rapping every single day, trying to get like the best verse. But when I met Nana, these guys were making music. They were doing musical arrangements. There were producers, DJs, singers, musicians. Everything happened, and just like it opened up my mind to music. You know what I mean? And that was when I started feeling like, okay, I got to transition and make this like real. I got to learn how to make songs. You know?
Real quick, before you met these guys, how were you handling your production? Because I'm sure finding beats was a bitch before. Like
I was taking beats off the internet, man.
Okay, so you was on, but where, on LimeWire? Because YouTube beats wasn't like.
I think it was something called SoundClick.
SoundClick,
like that. I think it was called SoundClick. Yo, this is back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, nah, you've evolved from the beginning, man. Honestly,
So I was taking beats off there, and then maybe like the DJ who I met, Art to the Izzy, he had introduced me to this guy, Zay, DJ Icon, and he was a producer. And that was the first producer that I've met. He was like giving me beats that he was making on Fruity Loops. But like to me at that time period, they sounded like the greatest things ever, you know? So it was like, that was like my first interaction working with a producer, you know? So yeah.
By the time you get to these guys that's like actually doing arrangements and everything like that, where do you feel like you were at? Because to be in a basement with 20 guys that's just kicking bars, to go to guys that are really musical and doing like different sorts of arrangements, were you like at a new beginning of some sort, or did you feel like you jumped right into it?
Yeah, I was at a place where it's like what I did then at that moment is that I realized that in my head, I was just like writing verses, writing 16s, this, that, and the third. In that space, I realized that what I was doing was actually like poetry, and I can figure out how to turn it into song format. So I would say I was really rough around the edges. You know what I mean? Like I'd get a beat from one of them, and like I just have a 32-bar verse, and it's like, nah, we gotta like cut it in half, and we gotta put a hook in here, and
16
turn this into a song, bro. You know what I mean? So it was like I actually learned a lot of that working with these producers and these DJs. You know. So yeah, I was definitely rough around the edges. So that was definitely like a new beginning for me. But you know what I mean? I knew how to put words together. I understood the idea of like culture and tribes and building communities because I had the basement with all these people around me. So I understood a lot of those elements, and I think that kind of like made it a little bit easier for guys to work with me, because it's all right, he ain't got it all together with making the songs, but he understands this element and this element. We could work with this, you know?
Yeah, and I think taking those pieces, you're starting to really cultivate a nice foundation for where you go with it, you know?
Yeah, hell yeah.
As far as like working with these dudes and, you know, going to the point where you learn to arrange records, had you had any bodies of work or any records out yet? Like, did you drop a mixtape at any point
Yeah, I
before?
had mixtapes. I mean, because that was like that time period. Definitely, that was like the G Unit mixtapes, the Dipset mixtapes, all of that. So yeah, man, I definitely like that was like clockwork for me. That was normal. Yo, download a shitload of instrumentals. We about to just murder all of them. So I had like two. I had like two mixtapes that I used to like sell in the neighborhood and give out. And because I had that relationship with that DJ, he kind of taught me like going to mixtape stores and like giving them mixtapes on consignment, and this, that, and the third. So I was able to like feature freestyles on his mixtapes and then slide some of mine's in. You know what I mean? So I had mixtapes out, you know what I mean? I had the hunger to make a project, you know what I mean? But I didn't understand there's so many different levels
Structure,
in
yeah.
the industry.
But
You know
that's
what I mean?
that's why I asked, because a lot of people, you know, you can spend years and years creating before you're actually confident enough to put something out. And I think it's the
Yeah,
people that actually put stuff out, whether they, you know, maybe you're confident in it, but it's still kind of rough around the edges. That's what
right.
really helps you cultivate the sound too, is getting that feedback. Because I'm sure those tapes from before you met these guys that showed you how to arrange are completely different than what was to come.
Oh, nah, for sure, man. You know, you gotta be open to that because I feel like feedback sometimes like scares people. You know what I mean? Because it's
Yeah,
like they take it personal, but once you realize that like all of this is just information, and you just got to pick and choose what you want to do with the information, at least let it all in, but then make your own decisions. You can just do everything so much better. So I think I was always open to information. You know what I mean? I was always open to like, all right, cool. What is it that you feel about all of this? What is it that you feel I should be doing? And then I can make my own decisions, you know?
yeah, I love that you didn't help back, bro, because so many people do. Um,
Yeah, nah, for sure, man.
So by the time you put out like an actual project, what's your mentality like as far as like career wise? Because were you really doing this for like to make money and to do this for real, or was this kind of something that you was doing in the midst of like, I mean, I'm assuming you went to school or
Yeah. So at first, man, I was just trying to impress my friends.
nothing
You know what I mean? I just
wrong
like,
with that?
yeah, it was just like, oh shit, like the people in my neighborhood like my raps, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna put together mixtapes, this, that, and the third. And then I think that I definitely had a moment where it was just like right around the time I was about to leave Philadelphia, where it's just like, yo, I got to figure out how to do this like seriously, you know what I mean? And I started like working on a project, you know what I mean? That I then ended up finishing in New York City. But but yeah, at first I was just really just trying to do it for the homies, you know what I mean? And then as I started to learn how to craft songs and whatnot, that it really put me in a position of like trying to figure out how to do a project, you know?
Is that what brought you to New York? Was it the music or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
else?
So I ended up in New York because so my homie Nana, he was like he had moved to New York a year before us. Um and he had hit me up one day. He was just like, yo, I had this epiphany that like you was out here in New York and like we was like working on music together, this, that, and the third. And I was going through like it was a crazy time period during that time period of my life. Like the last 3 years in Philadelphia, it was just like father had passed. I had ran into a case of like mistaken identity where like the cops picked me up for something because I fit the description.
Of
You know
course.
what I mean? And they were trying to get me a shitload of time. And then like one of my friends had got shot up and people were going to jail. It was just so much happening. And like when he hit me and he told me that, I was just like, at that same moment, I felt like I was in a loop. You know what I mean? I was just like, all right, look, I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean?
I'm
I'm
out.
moving to New York. You know what I mean? So I sold my car, took that little bit of money, put it down on my half of the deposit for the apartment, and moved up there with one check. You know what I mean?
Bring
And
the equipment.
yeah. Brought the equipment and that was it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like how I like transitioned to New York City. You know what I mean?
Okay. One thing I have to ask you about, just because it's been on my mind for like the 3 weeks that's went into planning this whole interview.
Yeah.
Literally, I'm gonna read you the tagline that your representation is saying. It says, Pharrell co-signed artist Doc Cromwell. I can see why Pharrell would love you, because clearly you have a lot of different elements that are real musical, and this isn't just a gimmick like a lot of kids. But
Yeah.
at what point does somebody cross paths with Pharrell? Like, because that's
Yeah.
crazy, bro. Is this way later, or had you started
This
working with
is
people in
recently.
New
This
York?
just happened.
Oh, really?
This happened this summer. Yeah,
All right,
yes.
we'll get there. We'll get there. I just was curious because you know you come to New York and you start working on music. I'm sure you're in a lot of places with a lot of people. Like,
Yeah.
how does things evolve? Do you link with anybody in New York that takes it to
Nah,
another level?
for sure, for sure. So like, it's crazy, right? Because like when I first get to New York, I'm like, all right, I got to figure out how to make money and stay afloat. Like I jumped into this New York idea and it's like, I didn't really figure out how to make money or anything like that. So my ex-girlfriend from Philly, you know, right before I had left, I guess she was like a manager at like CVS, you know what I mean? And she was always telling me like, yo, you got to do something. You got to work. You got to like, you can't just be out in the streets, this, that, and third. And she had put my name up. And when I got to New York, they called me. You know what I mean? And it was like, hey, look, do you want to come try for like a little lower manager position? And I was like, hell yeah. Like, okay, this is how I'm going to be able to like establish things in New York City and be able to have money and figure things out. And I went there and I was like, they was like, yeah, cool. We make you like a shift supervisor. And like literally in like a year or something, like I moved all the way up to like a store manager. I started like building CVS stores in New York City. Like,
Oh shit.
it was ridiculous. It moved really, really fast. But what happened was I got lost in that. You know what I mean? I got lost in that and I just started living a New Yorker life. Like
Yeah.
going out on the weekend, bagging different girls, this, that, and the third. And I completely kind of like lost sight of like what I was supposed to be doing, right? So I want to say around like 2015 or something like that, I just got to a place where I was just like, all right, look, I got to figure this out. You know what I mean? I just stopped working at work, you know what I mean? So that they could like, and they terminated me. I got the unemployment. I was like, all right, cool. I'm about to just like figure this out, jump all the way back into the music. And yeah, one of my longtime producers, Nana, he was working with an artist named Jadena. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And you know, we had all met each other and we knew each other. And I had known Jadena for a while. And then like I guess like in 2015, I think, like his whole thing took off with the Classic Man song.
Yeah. I was
You know what I
say
mean?
I can't think of a more perfect person to come across because not only is Jadena like the nicest dude ever, but he's also like super talented as far as like the creative, you know?
Yeah. Nah, that's the homie. That's the homie. So then like, you know, his Classic Man song took off, you know, and whatnot. And that was when it's like for me, that I mean, I think I want to say that was like the first artist around me that I've seen like, you know, kind of like make that leap to the next level. And that was when it was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, okay, got it. I kind of get a better understanding of the whole terrain and whatnot. And I want to say like one of the first opportunities for me within the industry, I want to say it's like 2017. That's when I would say things became like professional. You know
Okay.
what I mean? I had a song, it was a song I was working on called, it had a different name to it. But yeah, like basically I was working on it with Nana and Jadena and it ended up going on his project, Boomerang. So it was like me, him, and Wale featured on it. You know
Wow.
what I mean? Yeah. So that was kind of like the first, I guess to answer you, like one of the first like collaborations with something with an established act. You know what I mean? For me.
And I'm
And that's kind
assuming
of
you
like
make
when
money
things
with
kind
that
of like
too.
started. What you say?
I'm assuming you made some money with that.
Well, yo, that was when I really started figuring out like, oh, okay, this is how you can like generate income off music. Like this is how, you know what I mean? From that point on, then I wasn't so much like you know, you meet people in New York and whatever, and you be networking, you'd be like, oh yeah, I rap. And until they have certain things that they can like put you next to, you just like a nigga with a mixtape. You know what I mean? And that's just how they were, oh yeah, everyone has a mixtape, you know what I mean? But it's like, once you have something like that, you know, people do, it's like brand recognition. You know what I mean? Like they see me today, it's one thing. Tomorrow they see my name next to Coca-Cola and it's like, oh, he's this now. You know what I mean? And it's like, I was him already, you
it,
know?
it's extreme with music for sure, but I feel like it's like
Yeah,
that with anything. Like they
yeah,
want to see that you could actually do the job before giving you the job, whether you're working at CVS or you
exactly.
like if you're not able to really manage people, they're not gonna have you building stores, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I would say in New York, or in my music career, that feature right there was the first, like, I guess, form of validation that other folks needed to see to be able to be like, all right, let's who's that? You know what I mean? So
So
yeah.
it became music like completely as the career at that point.
Yeah. So it was like, actually, it was like it was like a merger of two things. You know what I mean? So it's so crazy. Like I really lived so many different lives. It feels like. So
No,
don't.
you
So
put your time in, bro.
what you say?
I respect it. You put your time in. You could tell because I could see the evolution and the fact that you've had the times in New York where you was having a lot of fun. It's like, even though it might not be the most productive for the business, it's like that living that you gather content, it puts your perspective in check. Like to
Yeah.
go from early 2000s to 2015, just working on different things, trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. It'll really set you up to do some special shit once the the dots do connect.
Exactly, man. So and that's really what it was. It was like all the way up till 2015, I was just learning, you know what I mean, and practicing and stuff like that. And then so in 2015, when I ended up leaving that job, like I was broke at that point. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know what I was going to do. I ended up, we name our houses, right? So we had a creative house. We had it was called the Helipad. That was the one I was living in when I was like working at CVS and all of that stuff. So then once I left that job, I ended up moving into the Parlor, which is based in Brooklyn, and that was the creative house that Jadena ran. You know what I mean? Before his thing took off, right? So then I moved my team in there, the Aviated Culture. That's what we were called. So we moved in there, and yeah, man, I didn't know what I was going to do from 2015 to like 2017. I just didn't have it figured out. And I was just like, I would just be doing random stuff. Like I just knew I couldn't go back into working in corporate America.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I couldn't give that much of my life. I could do something that was flexible. I could do something that was freelance, but I couldn't do that. So I want to say that like during that same time period, building towards 2017 is when I started to figure out that I had certain skill sets that could allow me to like kind of like be self-employed. You know what I mean? So, and it would make it so I can take that and kind of like fund that into the music, you know? So I ended up like, this is so crazy. Like I ended up getting an opportunity to strategize social media for USA Today Sports.
All right.
Which is insane, right? Because like, I'm not the greatest at strategizing social media for myself. You know what I mean? But if a huge brand comes to me and they say, this is where we want to go, this is what we're trying to do, I could just help them get there for some reason.
Were you into sports, by the way? Because you haven't mentioned sports once.
Nothing.
You're the guy for the job.
I literally had a homie, right, who I've been cool with since like college. And this is why, like, I don't know what the only thing I think is even important from college is networking relationships, right? So he happened to just be in this position where he was there and they wanted to expand the YouTube channel. And they was just like, yo, we need someone who understands YouTube. So he's like, yo, my homie Dot, he raps. I'm sure he puts videos on YouTube. Let me call him. You know what I mean? And for me, I just have this thing where I'm just like, I'm going to say yes, and then I'll figure it out later. So I was like, yeah, I could do it. For sure I could do it. Like, yeah, I went in there, had a meeting with them. I was like, yes, I could do this. I went to the other room, got on the computer, and taught myself everything. And it was like, so I did.
I love this shit.
Yeah, of course. So I started doing that. And then right after that, then it was like that leveled me into a position where I was able to strategize and help do social media for Blizzard Activision, like the video game company that had their biggest title was like Call of Duty. Yes, I did that with them for a while. You know what I mean? And so all of those kind of put me in a place where like now, you know what I mean, I'm able to like bring clients on and pretty much like strategize social media for them. And that's what I'm able to do like in connection, you know what I mean? So that just put me in a place where like I was able to then, you know, like start my own company, Million Watts, you know what I mean? And take all of these different skill sets, you know what I mean, and put them together, you know? So
wow.
Yeah. It was a lot, but that's pretty much like what happened for me like around 2017. I was able to literally be like, all right, cool. It's music, and then I'm self-employed.
And then, now you're just doing things on your own terms.
Exactly, man. And now I love the idea of independence now, because not too long ago, I was just like, man, I need to figure it out. Maybe I need a record deal. Maybe I need an advance, this, that, and the third. And now I'm in a place where it's like, that's the farthest thing from my mind.
And it's great that you got at that place, bro, honestly, because I think as time goes on, so many kids, they rely on these record deals. But it's like, ultimately, if you could figure out how to make money and create on your own terms, you have the peace of mind and you're able to sustain yourself. Because like a lot of these kids, you know, they sign the deal thinking that, all right, I'm going to just keep rapping how I was rapping. I'm going to keep making what I was. And it's like, nah, now you have 10 people in suits that don't get the culture, that have input on what you're going to put out and present to people, you know?
Yeah. And you know, and the thing, and because of that, based off what you said, the thing that I love the most is that I'm on a journey, you know what I mean? But that I took the long way, like no shortcuts, you know what I mean? But because of that, it's like I've got to at least put my hands on all the different mechanics and all the different workings of everything on my ascent. So it's like when it isn't in position where where I have to put someone in position for something, I know what success looks like in that department. You get what I'm saying? Where like a lot of people, you know what I mean, end up signing to record deals and this, that, and the third. And then it's like, you know, what happens when that situation dries up? Now you got to figure out how things actually worked. You know what I mean? I already know how things work. You know what I mean? So that's why like I'm excited about the space that we're in right now.
Facts. And like not for nothing, if the right situation does come along, at least you know how to have the conversations when it comes to the marketing, the digital team.
Yeah, of course.
Team, you know?
Always open to partnerships. You know what I mean? But
just put that out there.
Not selling ownership though.
If Hov is watching this, he listened to your first tape, bro.
Yeah, hit me, Hov.
Yeah, listen, you never know. So I have to ask, where does Pharrell come into play?
Cool. So, boom. So
he don't co-sign anybody. Like the only person I've ever seen him co-sign is like Maggie Rogers, who's ridiculously funny.
so I mean, okay, so boom. So what happened is, so over this last year, I don't know, intern 2020, I just decided like, all right, cool. You know what I want to do? I want to release a record every single month. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to like make sure that like, if anything, there's just a level of consistency, and I want to completely unattached from any of the results. You know what I mean? I just wanted to put it out, and then just like, and I don't have, and whether it gets shared here or picked up here, it doesn't matter because I already have another one next month, and I'm already shifting my focus there. So I started off my year like that, and it was dope because then like, you know, I put out this record called Puff Shit, and it was dope. And it did well. I mean, and you know, it was doing moderately cool, but it was all right. I wasn't focused on that. I already shifted my focus. And then I released this record called St. Jameson. And when I put it out, then like it got put on like some Spotify playlists and some Apple Music playlists and Tidal playlists. And it started getting like playlisted everywhere. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Cool. Let's go to the next record. And I put out God Bless. So what happened is I think because of that level of consistency, you know what I mean, I started to build like a rapport and a relationship with SoundCloud. Okay. You know what I mean? So they ended up, you know, SoundCloud is always doing like these really, really cool things to just help independent artists and put them in different spaces. You know, SoundCloud started like their own distribution arm called Repost, which is really, really dope, man. I'm currently distributing my music through them. They're one of the places that I rock with heavy. And yeah, I guess like the team in SoundCloud, you know what I mean, really liked my record. You know what I mean? God Bless. And they started sharing it, and, you know, so Pharrell heard it, you know what I mean? And he just like, yo, I really, really like this record. Can we put this on a project? He just happened to be doing a project with SoundCloud called like the I Am Mother compilation. Basically like his label, I Am Mother, and SoundCloud, they got together to make like an album, you know what I mean, to release. And you know, I think they was about to close it up, and like, you know, he heard my record and just like loved it, you know?
Did y'all get to have any kind of conversation, or was this completely like the forces that be?
So I want to say like, the forces that be, you know what I mean? I've interacted with definitely all the folks at SoundCloud and a few of the folks over at I Am Mother. Okay. I'm sure me and Pharrell will have to cross paths. But you know, this is all new. You know what I mean? This is recent. This just happened. So I'm currently living in this right now. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I just asked because it's like you seem like somebody who doesn't compromise on the sound, and Pharrell is definitely somebody who never compromises on the sound. So to have something together on a project, like there has to be some sort of person from his team that he trusts, or you communicating to make sure that it's coming across the way that you want it to be and the way that he wants it to be, you know?
Yeah. You know, I think it happened to be perfect timing. You know what I mean? They when they knew they wanted to do this project, I saw like they were talking about it. When I went back to look at it, I saw they were talking about it like in April or whatnot, that they wanted to like, they were mentioning they wanted to do the project. And then I think right around like May or June, it was like, man, that was when like everything was happening with George Floyd, and like the world was just like really, everything was like really, really heightened. COVID was at its top. And they were just like, yo, we really want to like make sure that we're selecting songs that kind of like fit what's happening right now. And it's so crazy. Like God Bless is actually a record that I made last year. You know what I mean? And I had just been sitting on it. And I had spoke to a lot of different aspects of like, you know, gentrification in Brooklyn and things of that nature. And you know, like run-ins and incidents with the law, you know what I mean? And feeling like, damn, I just want to live old. I'm not trying to get killed, you know what I mean? And it's unfortunate that's actually just part of the DNA of my music. I didn't make that song because of this time period. I already had, that's an old song that I forgot about. You know what I mean? And one of my producers pushed me to release it because he's like, this shit is fire, bro. You got to put it out. So it just happened to be like really like timing. You know what I mean? I think the message that I was saying in there really fit to like what they were doing. And ultimately, you know, like music like that comes from me because, like you said, man, I'm not compromising. You know what I mean? Because I made this. I initially was rapping because I just thought it was cool, you know what I mean, for my friends. And then at some point it warped into like it being like therapeutic for myself. You know what I mean? And I think for me, the most important thing with God Bless, aside from like any cosign or whatnot, is that when it released, there was someone who DM'd me and was just like, yo, you know, I was having like a horrible day and I heard God Bless and it changed my entire mood today. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, that's probably the most amazing cosign period. You know what I mean? Is that like, I could walk into a room, there's no sound, and me and two other people, musicians, can all of a sudden create this magical piece of art. And then I can upload it to the internet. Someone on the other side of the world can hear something that came from my head and it can change their actual mood. Like after that, then I felt like that there's a whole lot of cool things that happened, but that was probably the thing that made me feel like an obligation to continue to create for sure. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I feel like I'm serving a purpose now. Like, what if this person, they needed that song? What happened if they didn't hear that song?
And I think it's important to note that like genuine music's the best music. Like, cause you know, obviously we could put this on YouTube, title it like Pharrell cosign artist tells his story, rah, rah, rah. But I think what's really important is for people to understand everything that embodies the artist and how they create the things that they create. Cause it's not just about any one particular cosign, but it's clearly you live in this shit. And when people listen to the music, it's resonating and they're feeling it to the point where somebody of that magnitude is like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it feels good. It feels good to know that like, all right, cool, I made this. It's great. They're like, oh shit, you see it? You know what I mean? But it's really good that it's like it's touching people. You know what I mean?
That's why he sees it. Like, not for nothing. It's like everything you've been talking about. Like, that's the thing that struck me. It wasn't necessarily even like that Pharrell co-signed. It's just like understanding the entity that is and how stubborn and strict he is about music. I'm like, the only person he's gonna co-sign is somebody who's just as much that, if not more. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen it. And it's like to be going through all the motions that you went through over the years, from working in regular jobs to collaborating, you know, with your friends, and being able to put this from a place where it was just rapping on a karaoke machine to actually learn how to structure songs to get here now. I think it's dope as shit, man.
Man, appreciate that.
So what's to come? What's next?
I mean, well, definitely nonstop music, more music. So I just released a tape actually 2 days ago, in partnership with SoundCloud, called the Midnight Clouds tape, just 3 records. It's a lot of aggressive energy, you know what I mean?
Why Midnight Clouds?
You know what? I have a song that I wrote a while ago called Sunset in New York. It was one of the first records that I wrote when I got to New York, and it was because like I was telling you, I was broke when I got to New York. I didn't know what I could actually do to fill my time when I was off work. And I used to see people like running in Central Park. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start running in Central Park. I don't have nothing else to do. And I remember like sitting down one time and like just starting to like write raps in a certain spot out there. And I would always, at the time when I would do it, it would always be during sunset. And I had used that song to kind of speak about like, it was like a timestamp for me, like everything that was going on crazy in my life, and kind of like putting it in a place where like I could always go back and listen to this and remember where I came from. And I have those timestamp records. And because I've always like, there's something about the sunset. The sunset has always stuck with me. You know what I mean? And I started to like analyze it so much, I started to like fall in love with the way the clouds would look at certain times when the sun was hitting it. So I ended up putting like a tape together like 2 weeks ago. it's nonstop. I just keep doing music. Like 2 weeks ago, I did it with SoundCloud, and I call it the Lavender Clouds tape. You know what I mean? Because there was a certain point where I would see the sunset, where it's like I would see like these lilacs and these lavenders, and I just really loved that. And then as I would see it get darker, I would know midnight was coming in. It was like the Midnight Clouds tape, and it was like the Lavender Clouds tape is kind of more of like my melodic music and whatnot, and the Midnight Clouds is like me kind of like getting ready for hoodie weather. You know what I mean? And like putting out some more of that aggressive music. It's really aggressive. It's a workout tape.
Listen,
you know
I need to sit with that because that's the vibes I've been on lately. It's just like straight
yeah.
hungry.
Yeah. Like this Midnight Clouds tape is definitely for anyone who is like definitely focused on like entrepreneurial shit, you know what I mean? Being independent, you know what I mean? Being self-sufficient. Like it has a lot of that energy in it. So definitely there's gonna be a new single every month for the rest of this year. So that's what I'm moving towards right now. And yeah, man, I am working on a project, a full-length project, hopefully for like 2021. You know, I'm really like, I have a full skeleton for it already. You know what I mean? It's just about like fine-tuning it and like fleshing it out. But you know, we'll see how things go. Because I've been doing a lot of these like digital, virtual performances, and they're cool. But you know, I want to get back on the stage. I want to touch the people. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know if I could see myself putting out this full project before there's even like a glimmer of that being possible again. But we'll see. For right now, definitely my plan is just to offload more music. Just more music. I just want to create the soundtrack for y'all lives.
So 2 more questions for you. One, what would you say is like the mark of success for you? And like all the years of putting out music, of like working towards, I'm sure, some goal. I mean, obviously you've hit these milestones along the way with building out the company, making money, just doing something that you love to do. But like, is there an overall, like, this is where I need to be with this? Or are you kind of going with the flow, enjoying it and just kind of having the best life, you know?
Yeah. You know, it's hard for me to pick like actual things like, oh, you know, if I got a Grammy or if I got that. Because I feel like I always move the goalposts for myself, because it's like I have certain things in mind and then I work towards them. So by the time I actually do achieve them, I already feel like it was deserved. You know what I mean? Which is like, I have to fight myself to not be jaded about it. Because, you know, it's like, and then, you know, you're like in like a certain, as an artist, it's like you have to start, once you're interacting with all artists, you guys are actually in a bubble. You know what I mean? So certain things you might achieve, you're like, well, everyone around me is achieving it too, so it's cool. And then like you go back outside of your bubble and everyone's like, yo, you did that. And you like, what? You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know if there's like a physical, an actual, like a staple thing that I can name. I would definitely say like, it's what I'm moving towards right now, which is just like, I would say once I get to a level of feeling like financial, some level of like financial freedom and peace of mind at the same time, you know what I mean? Then that's when I would feel like that's what success looks like. You know what I mean? Like financial, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's just like, man, like our time is the thing that's the most important. You know what I mean? But you got to be able to like buy your time. You know what I mean? Some people have to go work however many hours a week, you know what I mean? And that they got to give their time away. That's what they're doing. They're giving their time away for the resources that they need to stay alive. You know what I mean? So it's like, if I can have the resources I need to stay alive and have my time, that's successful. You know what I mean? Who knows? You know, for me, you know, having those resources might just mean everything's on auto pay. My mom is straight. You know what I mean? And I can create, you know what I mean? And that might be cool. Maybe it ain't got to be Jeff Bezos' 200 billion. And I don't want it, but you know.
Not that it wouldn't be nice, but like,
right.
I love that. Because, you know, they always say, they like, if you want the relationship, don't go looking for it and it'll come to you. And I think so many people, they have these like tangible goals, which are not bad to like for motivation. But also motivation is only so much, you know, like at the end of the day, I can't name a lot of artists that are able to even sustain a life, period, whether it's an extravagant one or a simple one, strictly off of what they're creating. And the fact that you've had some of these notable moments with people that are super, you know, respected, like artists that you've worked with are actually artists and not like gimmick artists, you know, or like characters, I think is a win within itself. And it's just learning as you grow to like be grateful for those things. And, you know, like you said, just keep moving the goalposts forward, you know, one day at a time.
Yeah, of course.
My last question, Doc Cromwell, I see your name here, unless this isn't your name. How do you come up with the name Doc Cromwell? At what point in the journey does that happen? And why that name, because it's very unique.
Yeah, you know what? It was a lot of different like changes with, not a whole lot of different changes with my name, but originally, you know, back in my neighborhood, it's really actually, it's a really a simple story how I got the nickname Dot. You know what I mean? It just came from like, I'm show my age a little bit, I guess. Like before cell phones, you know what I mean? When you would like go to your friend's house and like basically like one of the homies, you go to your friend's house and you would have to let whoever, like a girl that you're talking to or whoever, like, I'm gonna be at such and such house, call me there. You know what I mean? So one of my homies, same thing, normal thing, like they would come on over to the house. And this is when I was like, this is a rough time. This is when I was transitioning out of the karaoke machine, but I didn't have like the recording set up yet. So we had like a computer speaker with a computer microphone and a rubber band around it. So the beat would come out the speaker and we rapping it at the same time. Yeah, man, on a compact computer.
It's awesome, but it sucks.
Yeah. So this during that time period. So one of the homies come over and he was telling a couple of the different girls, like, call me at Brandon's crib. They was still just call me Brandon. And he was like, yeah, I'm at Brandon's, like one of the girls called and she like couldn't hear him or something. He's like, I'm at Brandon's crib. I'm at B's crib. B dot Cromwell. B dot Cromwell. And then it's like they just start calling me B dot.
God.
You know what I mean? And then there's like a certain dot in every neighborhood you grow up the front. There's a J dot, there's a S dot, there's a whatever dots everywhere, you know? So I kind of like, at some point I was working with an engineer, Jelani Day, and we didn't really have like a real name for myself. Like it was Dot, but it was like, how do you separate yourself? So sometimes people was like, oh, we call Dot the One. Like you're the one Dot that matters. So they would call me like Dot the One. But then when I met with Jelani one time, he was mixing my project. And he was like, yo, your last name is fire. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yo, your last name is mad interesting. Cause it's like the only time I've ever heard Cromwell was like Oliver Cromwell.
Yeah, I was saying, like that's a history book staple.
Yeah, it's like I've never heard this name again. You know what I mean? So it's like, yo, you should just be Dot Cromwell. You know what I mean? And I kind of sat with it for a while, and then after I said it a couple times to myself, and then I like put some testers out there and tested with a couple people, and people was like, that should sound like a cologne. That shit sounds elegant. You know what I mean?
Power to it. It's a powerful
name. You know. So that's kind of like how the combination came. And then lastly for me, it was one of those things where it was like, I'm still one of those people who's figuring out, like my family is like, I don't want to say dysfunctional, but there's it's not all connected together. You know what I mean? And that's definitely one of my goals in life is like to figure all of that back out. And it's still not completely clear to me, like how we got that last name. You know what I mean? But I do know it's an English last name and, you know, and we're African-American. So I have ideas of how I think I got that last name. And one thing I do see is that I definitely see like a lot of different things being like, I don't want certain histories to be whitewashed from the textbooks because we need to learn certain things in order for us to go forward. You know what I mean? So I never saw my last name as like, maybe my last name comes from slavery or this, that, and the third. Let me get rid of it. I kind of saw it as like, nah, you know, I need to keep that. You know what I mean? Like no one needs to ever forget that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like how just like, that's another part of the reasoning in Dot Cromwell, you know? So, but I'm glad people liked it. Cause at first I was like, man, this sounds too long, but nah, it works.
Nah, I love it, man. And I love this story. And I think that you're destined for some great things, bro. And I appreciate the time today.
Appreciate that, man.
So I'm going to check for this Midnight Clouds. You said it's Midnight Clouds.
Midnight Clouds available on SoundCloud right now. And, you know, depending on how the turnout goes, I'm going to send it to all platforms.
All right. Listen, I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm going to definitely check that out on SoundCloud, though. I appreciate the time today. And I hope
thank you. Appreciate you for having me, man.
Dot Cromwell, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Have a great one, man. Cheers.
All right, y'all. Peace.